Most people know Jupiter, Florida is the place where everybody on the PGA Tour lives. The St. Louis Cardinals do their spring training here. Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods live here. But if you're thinking about moving to Jupiter, there's a massive difference between just visiting here for a weekend or playing around a golf here and actually deciding to purchase a home here. So is it a true coastal paradise? Or are there some things that those of us who live in Jupiter keep hidden from you? So today, let's go beyond the vacation guides. I'm gonna give you the truth about what it's really like to move to Jupiter. And we're gonna talk about some things like the Jupiter real estate market and what it's like to live in Jupiter. My name is Casey Prindle, and I help people relocate to South Florida every day. Jupiter has become one of the most sought after communities in the whole country. Look, and I live here, I'll be honest, it's for a good reason. But with that popularity has come a higher cost of living, a complex web of neighborhoods, and a real estate market that honestly isn't that straightforward. In this video, we're going to cover the three big things that people always ask me about. The lifestyle, what's it like to live in Jupiter? The pros and cons of living in Jupiter. And of course, what's the real estate market look like in Jupiter? Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? So from Jupiter Island to Jupiter Farms, let's figure out if moving to Jupiter is the right move for you and your family. So oftentimes people want to move not just to Jupiter, but to South Florida for the waterways, right? I mean, our intercoastal system, if you're a boater, the beaches are, magnificent. And when we were in Fort Lauderdale, we were used to having high rises right up pretty much against the beach. So when we were trying to figure out where we wanted to move to, we drove up to Jupiter and we drove up towards Jupiter Island, and we realized that there's these huge swaths of beachfront around here. Forget having high rises, there's nothing in front of them. And even the high rises are pretty low density. And then so we kind of started to look around a little bit more as we were driving around, and we headed back down Indiantown towards 95. And we realized that, oh wow, so everything is low density here. There's no high rises. It's kind of wild when you're coming from a place like Fort Lauderdale that has a lot of density. And I think that's one of the most attractive things about Jupiter is that they've been able to maintain this, low density, not a whole lot of high rise. I think it's incredibly unique if you drive around South Florida because a lot of spaces here, man, they're just going vertical everywhere. So when we told people in Fort Lauderdale that we were going to move up to Jupiter, we kept having people say the same things, which is either, hey, you're not retired and you don't golf, so what are you doing moving to Jupiter? And I'll be honest that, when we came up here, we thought, well, that's a mistaken impression because there's a huge diversity of people up here. We live in Jupiter Farms, which is a more rural area. But we moved up here because we have an 8-year-old and we wanted a highly rated elementary school for her to go to. And that worked for us. But if you want to buy a condo on the beach, I can also show that to you. Or if you say, well, I'm from a more crowded place. I used to live in New York City. If you say, well, I want something that's not quite New York City, but I want a little bit of something going on, Abacoa might be a good fit for you. Abacoa has a lot more homes squeezed into a tighter area, much more walkable of a community. It's going to give you a little bit of a different feel than something like Jupiter Farms will, and much different than living on the beach will. So one of the things I bring up to people all the time is, look, you got to spend some time driving around here because you don't understand how diverse the neighborhoods and the real estate are around here. I think it's a really interesting thing. I think it's a huge pro to living here. All right, so I got a little bit ahead of myself on that last segment. That was just supposed to be about the lifestyle of Jupiter, but I get excited when I start talking about living here and real estate and everything. But let's narrow this down a little bit and just focus on some of the pros and cons of living in Jupiter. Let's talk about the Jupiter vibe. I want to tell you a story. One of my friends lives in Texas, and he came from Texas to come visit us. And I asked him, what are your impressions? What do you see? And he said, Jupiter's got an interesting vibe. He said, it looks like everybody is either stepping off of a yacht or stepping off of a golf course. And that's kind of how you guys dress. he says, it's very different than what I see every day. I thought that was a really good way to kind of look at the vibe of Jupiter. I do feel like, that's kind of the Jupiter dress code. I think let's call it, upscale casual. How's that for it? Look, this is not an inexpensive place to live. This is an area with incredible affluence. There's no two ways about it. So I think the vibe here I think that's a very well, kind of sporty, upscale, it's a cool vibe, because you can go to one of the local places and literally be sitting next to some guy with $1 billion and nobody really acts like it. So I think that's got a different vibe than a lot of other places around South Florida, which gets super flashy. I don't think people here are in a rush to show their wealth off in the way that a lot of other communities that exist here in South Florida do. Schools. All right. Whether somebody is looking in Jupiter or looking in another area, I will tell you, after doing real estate for over 15 years now and watching market trends and everything, one of the easiest and biggest predictor of values is the school system. If you have a highly rated school system, the homes in that area, generally speaking, will appreciate at a faster rate than an area that doesn't have as highly rated of a school system. Now, I would encourage you to look at Palm Beach County's website, or you can go to like niche.com or greatschools.org, and you can look at the ratings of the schools around Jupiter, and you're gonna find that they are very highly rated. The great outdoors of Jupiter. Look, I will say this. Again, we lived in Fort Lauderdale, which didn't have a whole lot of large parks. It has a lot of small parks. That's not that uncommon in South Florida, honestly. When you come up to Jupiter, it's different. The parks here are enormous. They've preserved a ton of land. So if you're into the outdoor stuff, we live by Riverbend Park. You can go kayaking, you can go biking. I taught my daughter to fish there. Well, I didn't teach my daughter to fish there. We went to somebody who taught us how to fish. You can go to like Dubois Park, which just has a really cool, if you want to be on the ocean, but you don't want to have all sorts of the rough seas. It's got this really cool lagoon. There's just a whole lot of really large areas set aside for parks here in Jupiter. And I think that's a huge benefit, because if you just want to get away from the world, man, there's plenty of places to go for a walk here, especially if you come west towards Jupiter Farms. We, north and south side of Indiantown Road have trails everywhere. The cons, let's call it the summer swelter. That's when it gets super hot down here in the summertime. And look, you got to be honest with yourself when you're thinking about moving to Florida. Florida's hot. There isn't two ways about that. Now, my dad comes down here for like 3 days, and all he wants to do is get back up to Massachusetts because he's a polar bear. He can't stand the heat. There's nowhere that my dad could live in Florida that would make him happy. If you're that kind of person, you got to be realistic about it, because it gets hot down here and you can't really escape it. You go out for 10 minutes, it feels like you've been outside for an hour. That's Florida, man. Now, does it really bother me after almost 20 years of being down here? Not really. No, honestly, I'm totally acclimated to it. And I was in hockey rinks my whole life, and I didn't think that I minded the cold weather, but now I think I did. I don't think I ever really liked it. But I think you need to be honest with yourself if you're thinking about moving down here. Now, that being said, pretty much everywhere has air conditioning without fail. So if you're hot, you're not gonna be hot for too long. You can just step inside. I don't know. I don't think it's that bad, but it depends on the person, because again, you may be like my dad and you'll never be happy down here. Traffic and infrastructure. All right, I mentioned the low density. We don't have an enormous population here. But especially in the January to April months, traffic gets heavier on Indiantown, and we really only have that one main road that runs east to west. If you look on a map, you're gonna find out, it kind of skips from Indiantown, and then you don't have many main roads that run east to west. Donald Ross is kind of the next one that you hit that runs there. So traveling east to west a few months out of the year can get a little bit challenging. Now, for somebody who's lived in Boston and New York City, does this traffic really bother me? I mean, come on, man. People in this town think 10 minutes of traffic is way too much. Again, talking to somebody who lived in heavily congested cities, it really doesn't bother me. All right, the Jupiter tax. This is something I didn't know about. Nobody warned us about this one when we moved here. Everything is more expensive in Jupiter than it is in some of the surrounding communities. Gas prices are a bit higher here than they are anywhere else. Not anywhere else, but if you go up to Stewart, your gas is cheaper than it is in Jupiter. If you go out to eat in Jupiter, it costs more money than it does in some of the surrounding towns outside of like Palm Beach Island and part of West Palm Beach. Look, it just costs more money to live here. There's no doubt about it. And I'm very upfront with people about that. This is a high cost of living area. Just know that going in. Now, is it a high cost of living compared to other areas of the country? Not necessarily, no. We can compare some other areas that are a lot more expensive than Jupiter, and I think you get a much higher quality of life here, but that's just my opinion. Let's talk real estate statistics. I'm gonna put a chart up here now. So from a real estate perspective, the Jupiter market is honestly incredibly resilient. And that just goes to a lot of people wanting to live here, right? So while some other parts of the country and other parts of the state, especially the west coast of the state, are seeing price corrections that are really kicking in, Jupiter really isn't. We're relatively stable here. And honestly, I don't really see that stopping because again, we have a lot of people that want to move to Jupiter. So I think we're buoyed here in a way that a lot of other places around the state of Florida even just aren't. So let's look at single family homes. One thing I want to point out here is that, look, if you're looking to spend under something like $650,000, your options are really limited in the single family home world. You're often going to look at houses that are going to require a significant number of upgrade to them if you purchase them. I just want to be perfectly clear about that. I want to give people a realistic expectation of what it's like if you're thinking you're buying a single family home in Jupiter. For all intents and purposes, you're probably going to start around $1 million. All right, new construction homes in Jupiter. I get asked about new construction homes in Jupiter relatively often, honestly. As somebody who built their house from the ground up, I understand the draw. We wanted new. We don't have room to do many developments here in Jupiter. There is a 60-acre parcel close to 95 that I think is going to trade hands, which may lead to a number of new homes coming in. But outside of that parcel, there just isn't a whole lot left. So what you really look at is buying a home that you're going to tear down and build up on. As you get closer to the beach, these prices skyrocket. The land is just worth an incredible amount of money, especially if you're waterfront. So if you're looking for new construction, just understand we're going to be talking about a lot of money. If you're looking for the most value in a new construction project, should a new development come up, that's probably going to be the first place I would look. The second place I would look is something like Jupiter Farms, where we do have new construction homes out here at a much more competitive price than if you go east of 95. How does Jupiter compare to our neighbor, Palm Beach Gardens? Usually if somebody's looking at buying a home in Jupiter, they're also looking at buying a home in Palm Beach Gardens. So I get asked this question a lot. So Jupiter versus Palm Beach Gardens often comes down to, what is it that you're looking for? If you're looking for a more affordable golf course community, Palm Beach Gardens is probably your way to go. If you're looking to be close to a mall, Palm Beach Gardens would be the way to go. If you're looking for higher density, Palm Beach Gardens may be the way to go. If you're looking for a larger selection of gated communities, Palm Beach Gardens may be the way to go. So it really depends what it is that you want within your search. Both communities have a lot of the same real estate with some differences in between them. And I think they're both great communities to explore. But here's where I think Jupiter wins. If you're looking for waterfront property and you're looking for boating, my opinion, I think that's where Jupiter wins. So if you're interested in a waterfront home in Jupiter, you're probably going to have a huge interest in boating. You're also going to want to look up into Cuesta. We have just a very wide intracoastal here that's super friendly to boating. So if you are looking waterfront, I'm going to tell you, I think Jupiter wins. I also think Jupiter wins if you, like my daughter, who rides horses, if you're looking for an equestrian community, Jupiter's going to win. Moving to Jupiter is a big decision, and it requires navigating a complex real estate market. But whether you're looking for a waterfront property, an equestrian property out in Jupiter Farms, a townhome in Abacoa, I truly think we have something for everybody here in Jupiter. The Jupiter real estate market is just a great thing to explore. If you're thinking about making a move to Jupiter, or Palm Beach Gardens, or Wellington, or West Palm Beach, or Palm Beach Island, or Del Rey, or Boca Raton, or anywhere in Palm Beach County, give me a call and let's talk it through.